something.
Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast.
Right into the mic. Welcome back to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast.
I didn't hear that.
This is Monday, December 16th. This is episode 157. Don Harris and his sniffles and Chuck McGinnick.
Smelling salts to get fired up.
Chuck McGinnick joining me, Matt Roy.
Mocos y vavas.
Already off the rails, just started.
Yes.
What's up, guys? How was the weekend?
Great.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Did absolutely nothing.
You worked yesterday.
Yeah, well, Sunday's a long day, but Friday and Saturday, nice relaxing days.
What about you, Chuck?
Yep.
And do anything Friday, Saturday?
Yes. Christmas party Friday, and my niece graduated from Texas State on Saturday, so that was fun.
Chip off the old block.
Chip off the old block, man. Glad to have
You went to graduation?
Bobcat. I did.
You sat through an entire college graduation?
Yeah, you know, they've done those. They do those pretty well.
Are they
now.
speeding those up now?
Yes. They're well orchestrated, well designed, good speakers, and then you get to watch a bunch of kids jump in the river afterwards.
Oh, that's
kinda
cool.
That's fun. My college graduation was so long. It was like an hour and a half of just sitting there. I was hungover as hell, so it was horrible. I was sweating
long.
vodka. It was horrible.
That's not incredibly long, an hour and a half.
An hour and a half? It felt like forever.
You go to one of those big schools with like 400 graduates, 600
Well,
graduates.
yeah, my ASU graduation when I got my master's was quick. They get those things efficiently.
Still got to call every single name, A to Z, man. That takes
Just
a
put
while.
a list up. Like, do we really need to say everyone's name? You can just say these 10 and then walk them
Well,
across.
it's a moment that they deserve.
I guess. Anyway, we got a lot going on as usual. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to YouTube channel Fox SA and News 4. Also, download, rate, review the podcast on your favorite podcast app. Helps us out a lot. Spurs back to 500 now after beating the Blazers, coming back from 17 down, then losing to the Wolves in one of really bad performance, I thought, offensively. We'll talk about how the offense, they have some key issues there, how they can fix it. Plus, the Cowboys beat the Panthers 30-14 yesterday. Probably their best offensive game of the entire year, I would say, besides the last 2 minutes, I think, of Washington was probably their other great defensive performance. Didn't end up looking like that in the box score, but it was. We'll talk about what they can show us over the last 3 weeks to kind of give us some hope going into next season, since right now I think they have a snowball's chance in hell of making the playoffs. Still a little bit of a chance, but not too much. And we'll talk about the Texans. They beat the Dolphins yesterday in a game that, honestly, they had no business winning. Their defense played well. Their offense played just horribly. Sorry to Des, our producer, or our editor who's listening right now. And they did not deserve to win that game. So talk about them possibly making some noise in the playoffs, what they need to fix over the last 3 weeks after now having clinched the AFC South. So let's do trivia first, though, guys. Trivia brought to you by me. Victor Wembanyama reached 2,000 career points on Sunday, the second fastest in Spurs history. Who was faster?
Got to be Dave, right?
David. Yeah, Ice would be the only other one, and he didn't start quickly.
Tim, maybe?
No, well, Tim didn't average what Dave averaged. It'd be David Robinson.
Is that your guys' guess, Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot my other phone, so let me pull it up for a second just to make sure I get it right. Dave is the fastest. Dave, it was 83 games. He scored 2,000 points. Wemby, 92 games. And third was Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan was 97 games to get to 2,000 points. But I thought it was interesting. Victor, even though he was on a minute restriction last year, didn't think that he would have gotten there that fast.
Yeah.
He was on that minute restriction after he tweaked the ankle a couple of times and whatnot. So I didn't think that he would get to 2,000 that fast, but 92 games is pretty quick for any player to get to 2,000.
Yeah, this guy was playing 20 minutes a game last year.
Yeah, for the longest time there was 20 to 25.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And he was putting up crazy numbers in those 25 minutes, even though they were losing games. But we were all like, can you just play him 32? Can we just, please? We're trying to get more of this. Only two players faster in NBA history, under 21 years old, to reach 2,000.
LeBron.
Nope. Zion and Luka Doncic.
Really?
Huh.
Only two players in NBA history to score 2,000 faster at under 21 years old. So, doing historic things as usual.
Luka puts up numbers. Man.
Dude, he is a walking stat
I
book.
guess so.
Hey, Zion puts up numbers too of its number of donuts eaten in
Quarter
a given
pounders.
Sunday. Yeah, right. All right, let's get to the Spurs
Whatever
here.
it
So
takes.
they fall to 13. They fall to 13-13 on the season. They lost to Minnesota 106-92 on Sunday. It was really a poor offensive showing, and to me, it's like the tale of two games. You look at the Blazers game, they shot 46% from the three-point line. Yesterday, 24% from the three-point line. 19 turnovers led to 30 T-Wolves points. This is what Coach Mitch had to say about the game before we get to our analysis.
Just back to the basics, same stuff we've been working on. There's nothing that happened tonight that feels like the bottom's falling out or something that we know is not, for the most part, in our control. So we have a couple of days to get some work in and focus on the basics and the fundamentals.
Yeah, I mean, I liked his quote there. There's nothing here that makes us think that the bottom's falling out. But still, it's like, if you don't hit 40% of your threes, they're basically going to lose the game. You can basically chalk that up. Right now, I think they were 11 for 20 or 11 for 45 yesterday. They ended up taking 92 shots. The Timberwolves took 100 shots in the game yesterday. Right now, the Spurs are shooting 22nd best from three-point range, but they're taking the 7th most three-point attempts per game. It's just not a recipe for consistent success.
Yeah, this three-point thing is very interesting in the NBA because I'd like to see, like, what the if they're alone or if this is, just the way it is in the NBA. Like,
well, three-point attempts are up all
whatever
across the league.
team shoots the highest three-point percentage is going to win the game. Because everybody's taking so many. The Spurs' problem is they don't have a lot of good three-point shooters. They have the best three-point shooters on their team, but the best three-point shooters on their team are not necessarily great three-point shooters.
Yeah, like Devin.
And so I've said it since before training camp. I think they needed to add. I would have loved to have seen them take Dalton Connect at number 8.
Me too.
I would have loved them to add a Doug McDermott type. We talked about it. They got such a gluttony of guys that fit that. Keldon, Devin, Malachi, Castle, name them. They're all 6'5" to 6'8" in that group, but none of them are designated snipers.
I mean, Champagne's probably the best three-point shooter, and yesterday he went 3 of 12. Devin was 0 of 6 yesterday. You're just not going to win games against teams. And credits to the Timberwolves, who are great defensively. I think they're the 4th. They have the 4th best defensive efficiency in the league, even after trading Cat and getting a Julius Randle, who is no slouch on the defensive end himself. You're just not going to win a lot of games like that, though, when you're shooting poorly and you have poor shooters taking a lot of poor shots.
Champagne's a good three-point shooter. Look what he did in Portland. Like, when they go in, it's a totally different story. But he has way too many nights where he's 3 for 12.
And I think, too, it's kind of how they're built, right? I mean, their best post player is playing out on the perimeter. So, of course, they're going to shoot more threes, right? It seems like you see Victor away from the basket more than you see him, trying to get down on the block. And
he was 1 of 7 yesterday from 3.
So,
yeah.
I mean, all of that just does not build and give you a lot of confidence. Is it that simple, though? Like, when it comes to the Spurs team, you don't even need to look at what the ending score was. If you just look at their three-point percentage, you can probably guess if they won or lost that game.
I think that's accurate. But I think, as I said at the very beginning, I think that might be true for every team in the league.
That's what I was going to ask. Is that the league standard?
Yeah, if a team has a 3 for 24 night from 3, they're probably going to lose. And if they go 11 for 24, they're probably going to win.
Yesterday, it was also painfully apparent that the Timberwolves had something that the Spurs don't. They have Anthony Edwards, and the Spurs do not have a player of that caliber, a player that even Wemby at this stage in his career, that you can just give it to him and go get a bucket. And Anthony Edwards is just far and away, it makes you realize the difference, the chasm of talent between some teams like the Timberwolves and teams like the Spurs that need a lot of things clicking on the right cylinder, clicking on those cylinders to win a game.
Yeah, they got nice pieces, and I think Gobert gets a bad rap. I mean, he's a damn good player. So.
Just because a lot of people don't like him.
That may be true, but
weapon,
I mean, he's
great defensively.
wide body, and he's good.
I think, and I've been thinking about this today. I think I'm going to do it on the 5 o'clock show. We have this a tendency to be hypercritical of Victor because you want more, right? There's times where he looks slow. There's times where he takes ridiculous threes. There's times where he doesn't look like he's running hard. And then you look down, and last night, 20 points, whatever it was, 12 rebounds, 7 blocks, 5 assists, 2010, 5-5. Passing Anthony Davis, Chris Webber, and Paul Gasol into 7th all-time for players with career games of that kind of stat line. Only 6 with more 2010 5-5 games in history are Kareem, Hakeem, Shaq, David Robinson, Duncan, and Kevin Garnett. This guy is halfway through his second season. Halfway through his second season.
I know.
Right?
92 games.
And so they're 13-13. Everybody picked them to win 26 to 31 games. We're a quarter through the season, and they're a 500 team, which means they're on pace for 41 wins. And they haven't had their full complement of players ever.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem, too, is the chemistry and the rotations are just different every night. Last night, Castle came back after missing a game and came off the bench where he had been starting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I found myself like this guy's so good that I am too critical of expecting more.
I'm in the same canoe. And imagine if you got the high energy and the running the floor and the constant bombardment of him never taking a second off. Imagine what you would get. And he has those gifts. He can be that guy that takes a moment off or a play off or whatever it is, doesn't get back down on the other end of the floor. Imagine what you would have, and that's what they're trying to get to. They're trying to get him to play hard every moment that he's on the floor. I mean, there's no negating what he's doing. It's astounding. Imagine what happens if the energy level is up all the time.
And I agree, but I'm also wondering, and this is just a wonder, is he giving us all he's got all the time? And it just looks different because he's so dang long. Like Blake Wesley, when he runs fast, is going to run a lot different than Victor with his stride length and his loping. And he's out of breath a lot of the time. So I think he's trying hard. Does it just look different?
And at that point, is the conditioning the question then? Like,
I don't know.
because they're playing him more this year when he's not hurt. Obviously, he's averaging somewhere close to 34.
Well, no,
minutes
what
a
I'm
game,
saying,
I think.
I'm not making the argument. I don't think Chuck's wrong. I just don't know. Like, I'm questioning whether or not we're wrong about that. Like maybe he's trying as hard. Maybe that's just what it looks like on a guy like that.
Is the reason we're critical because of the expectation of him? Because we see it. He makes a show-stopping, phenomenal play or 7 every game. So we almost want, it raises our expectations to the point where we want 95% of his plays to be that phenomenal thing.
Yeah.
Is that why? Maybe we're hypercritical.
There was a
of him?
sequence. There was a sequence last night where he blocked everything in about a 45-second span.
Right.
And it's like that. We didn't see that the quarter earlier, right? And there were plays where I thought, okay, he could have gotten to that and blocked that, and he didn't rotate over or whatever. And then there was a sequence where he made up his mind he was going to go get Anthony Edwards' shot. He was going to go get that other shot, and they went on that run and cut a 16-point lead down to 6. And it was mostly because of his defense.
Yeah, it was a 20-9 run right at the beginning of the third quarter, I think.
But then he's gassed and he has to come out or whatever. So I do think there are times where he might be saving some. But I don't know if that's a bad thing if it keeps him on the floor longer.
Yeah, I
Did,
mean,
did Tim Duncan give 100% every second he was on the floor?
Don't get him started on Tim again, please.
yeah,
Well, I mean, because a
Not
lot
more
of times
than-
he didn't look like he was doing a ton, but then you look at the same thing. You looked at the stats, and it was amazing.
Well, nobody's going to play like Manu, right? I mean, there are guys. Nobody's going to play like Russell Westbrook.
Dennis
there are
Rodman.
guys that just have that motor. Jeremy's the guy that's got the biggest motor now.
Dennis Rodman.
Yeah, he had.
He
that
was
kind of motor.
always the motor of every team he was ever on.
Yeah.
Let's hear from Wemby after
he
the
took
game.
plays off too, though.
They all
We
did.
saw
He
that.
took games off.
Yeah.
Let's hear from Wemby. He was asked last night about where the team is right now at 13-13 compared to where the team was a year ago.
So much different than last year. Now I feel like we're part of that, stacked West, and I think today there was 8 teams with 13 and 14 wins. So it's crazy, more than half the conference. So it's a pleasure, to be able to compete for these spots and to be, to ride alongside, those teams that have been big for a good amount of years. So it's a pleasure.
Sometimes I forget that English is his second language, and then I hear stuff like that, and I'm like, let's go, let's pick it up. He's right. He's not wrong though. 8 teams have 13 wins right now. The Spurs right now are 11th in the West, but they're only a game and a half out of 5th. So if you had told me that, a month and a half, 2 months into the season, the Spurs are going to be a game and a half out of 5th place in the West, I think we would all take that.
Yeah, 100%.
How good is it, Don, for a young team like this to kind of be in the thick of it, being able to experience all this, especially with the injuries that they've suffered so far this year, with Jeremy being hurt and Devin being hurt, Wemby being hurt for out for a few games, Zach, Keldon, Trey, all of them have missed time this year. How important is it for a team like this to experience being in the thick of the playoff hunt?
Well, I think it's good for them, for their mentality. Like Victor said, they wake up every morning and check the standings. And I think it keeps them from being discouraged. I think last year, the year before, there was some discouragement when you know that, after an 18-game losing streak or whatever. So, yeah, I think it's good. I think I'm surprised more that of the teams that aren't doing better, like Minnesota. Mm-hmm. The teams
Denver.
that should be, that I consider to be way better than the Spurs, are not in the one-loss column. And I think the difference for me is whatever night that was that Friday night in
the
Portland?
Portland game?
Yeah. I think I'm watching that game with 7 minutes to go, and
Down by 17.
they quit, right? I mean, they were done. In fact, I was watching the game. My wife had gone to bed. It was a late tip, right? So I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna watch the rest of this. I turned it off. I woke up the next morning and they had won. There's no way they win that game a year ago. Mm-hmm. And this was without Chris Paul. Mm-hmm. He got ejected early in the game. And I think it's different because of a mentality that Chris Paul's helped give them. And I even last night, as it started to get away, I was like, okay, I'm not going to quit on these guys now because
you never know.
You never know.
Chris Paul did not seem like he wanted to be part of that game on Friday. That was a pretty quick 2 texts that he kicked out of that one.
Yeah, he let him know what he thought. But
yeah, he kept talking. He talked for like 3 minutes after
Chris
that call.
Paul.
He was just bitching for 3 minutes straight.
Welcome to the Chris Paul we've all known and loved for 20
But
years.
to your point, Denver, Minnesota, Golden State, Phoenix, the Clippers, the Lakers, the Kings, and the Spurs, all 13 or 14 wins, all within a game and a half of that fifth spot. But if you ask me who's a better team, Denver or the Spurs, Denver's a better team.
By a mile.
Phoenix, who's a better team? Phoenix or the Spurs? So I think that's actually a good point by you, that the Spurs being in the same spitting distance as these teams who we consider vastly better than them is pretty impressive in and of itself.
Yeah, I think we should be encouraged, and I think they're only going to get better because I think they have had no consistency with lineups.
Yeah, they got to get healthy, man.
Yeah.
Anybody?
Yeah, we got a few roster recommendations for the comments. I'm just going to give you. We have 3 comments on it here. Jalen Green, some guy named Kai Soto from Japan. I guess he's a big 7'3", and then another commenter says we need to get rid of Jeremy. Your thoughts?
Jeremy's been playing really good. There's been nights where he's their best player.
Jeremy's turned. I think if you asked me which Spur has changed my opinion of them the most this season, I think it would be Jeremy.
I would agree with that.
Like he's like an enigma, man. He's just like he's so inconsistent on the offensive end sometimes, and he gives the ball to the other team, and it makes me want to tear your hair out. And then he does things like yesterday when he gets the block on. I don't know if it was Anthony Edwards or if it was Julius Randle, takes it all the way the other way, assists on the basket. And it's like, oh, that was a 5-point swing because of Jeremy's consistent effort. And so he has those
Jeremy
plays
does
every
things
night.
that drive you crazy, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
he's got hands of stone, but he's got such a great motor. He tries so hard. He
He's a
makes
good
so many good
teammate,
plays.
too.
And listen, he's gotten to be really good with Wemby having the ball, of knowing when to cut and where to cut. And Wemby probably has more assists to him this year than anybody else in his assist line.
Agreed. And I think if you asked me 2 months ago, do I want them to trade Jeremy or should they trade Jeremy? I think my answer would be different than it is now.
No, I don't see Jeremy go.
I don't think Jeremy should go anymore. I was on the fence with him and Keldon at the beginning of the year. I think Keldon is more of the disposable player, lack of a better term, being disposable. But I think he's the one that might be traded before the end of the season. I don't know who this Japan guy is.
Kai Soto. He's
You know who I
7'3".
loved the other night?
I have no idea. Who that is.
Jeremy Grant from Portland.
Oh, he played really well. Yeah.
Oh man, he's good.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the Cowboys here. Thanks for everyone who commented on the YouTube, and thanks for tuning in right now. We're going to talk about the Cowboys. They beat the Panthers yesterday, 30.
But let me just finish the Spurs by saying the reason that they lost last night was because of those awful uniforms.
Would you stop with the uniforms? They're not that bad.
They're horrible.
They're not that bad.
They're
I do, however, have a new gripe. I hate when teams take or don't use their primary colors. Like why the Kings the other night are looking like the Pistons. Like why are we using?
But
I know those were old. I know those were old.
That has a history at
but
least.
still, like why are we using? Why are the Spurs wearing baby blue uniforms? Like the Broncos, why are you wearing a baby blue? Like I just don't understand why teams go outside of their normal color schemes. Doesn't make any sense. There's a lot of teams that love the baby blue uniforms now. It's like that's not your uniform. That's not your color.
If the Spurs wore red, white, and blue, like red jerseys with white and blue trim, I'd be okay with it because it goes back to the Dallas Chaparrals. Like that has something to do with them. But hemisphere colors, avocado and brown and everything, they didn't come here till 73. Hemisphere was in 68. The Spurs have nothing to do with hemisphere.
Brown is just a bad color for a uniform. Right,
Although, Bob, your Browns yesterday, that all white,
You like that?
Looks
that
good.
looks good. Especially with the orange drop shadow on the jersey numeral. Really nice.
I think that any team all white is pretty good. Like
Yeah.
the Saints all whites with the gold
The
and black
Packers
trim,
yesterday?
so good.
Packers,
Yeah, the Packers. It's like all white,
Clean.
and then using their primary colors to
Clean.
finish it is just so good.
I hate the whole thing though when they do the all a different color. You know, like all red or all blue.
The old color
I hate it
rushes.
so, like I guess they started for Thursday nights. They were doing that.
Yeah,
but
it was the old color rush
That
uniform.
Texans red was awful.
Well, you remember what was it, the Bills Jets? It was all red versus all green, and it looked like Christmas, and it was in October. I was like, that's what everyone was like. What the hell are
What
these
did you
color
think of
rush
the
uniforms?
Lions black alternate?
I
yesterday?
love. See, black and white are just so good. Like the Arizona black with the red trim, black numbers, so clean.
Those helmets looked awful.
Yeah, the Lions.
They were bad luck for the Lions. That's all I know. The amount of injuries that they suffered in that ball.
Dude, Monty Williams out, or Monty Montgomery's out now. David Montgomery out now with the messed up MCL. Whoever has him on their fantasy
It's all
teams
about
is-
health, man.
Sorry. Gibbs season though. Anyway, let's get to the Cowboys. So the Cowboys defeated the Panthers 30-14 yesterday. Now 6-8 on the season, which makes the Bengals loss just that much more, just a gut punch because you'd be 7-7, right? Kind of in the thick of things in the playoff hunt if you were there. But now 6-8 on the season. I thought that they consistently in the last like 4 or 5 weeks keep showing their fight a lot. Even yesterday, losing Trayvon Diggs out for the season. The injuries keep on piling up. Their season injury total has to be in the 10 to 12 to 14 players aspect. And it's all players that were key contributors on this team or guys that you expected to be key contributors. Like DeMarcus Lawrence, I think that we didn't think he was going to be out for 10 weeks when he got hurt. And now I don't even know if he's going to play again this season. I don't know if he's going to play again for the Cowboys.
Why would they play him?
I mean, but that adds to the point. Like Trayvon Diggs, DeMarvion Overshown, Zach Martin, all of these guys just out for the season. And the resolve, I think, and the fight that they've shown over the last few weeks has been really encouraging.
Agree. I mean, you're talking about the injuries, though. Makes me think about the Lions, right? Before yesterday, their injury list was longer than anybody's, and
Yeah.
yet they're winning games.
Looks like a scroll.
It goes to the point of there are no excuses, right? You're in the big boy league. You've got big boy players, even in the second and third team and on the practice squad. But they have done a really amazing job. It's somehow cobbling something together that looks like football, because that looked like football yesterday against a pretty darn good team. I know the Panthers aren't winning a lot of games, but they've been giving everybody a fist fight
Yep.
too, especially the last month or so. And that was by far the Cowboys' best game, start to finish yesterday. They dominated those guys.
They had one
Other
bad
than the
play.
one bad play.
Yeah,
Yep.
one bad play, 83-yard touchdown for Bryce Young at the end of the
I
first
always
half.
get the vision of, your team's getting ready to score, so the defense is over there having a Gatorade, and they're just ready to go to halftime, right? They're not ready to play. And then there's a turnover like that, and they're like, oh, crap, now I got to go back in the game. And then, boom, the first play you get over the top, somebody takes it to the house. That's always my vision on something like that. Like, the defense was not ready to go at that moment.
I mean, it's just it's one of the weirdest, most injury-plagued seasons that I can remember with the Cowboys. And I think that it's a credit to the coaching staff of how well they've kept this team together. Also a credit to guys like Micah and CD of their leadership, I guess. They've both said some things that I think we've talked about on the podcast and have been questionable, to say the least. But the leadership they've shown over the last 3-4 weeks has been pretty good.
Yeah, I think Micah grew up a little bit this year, especially with the like you said, taking a leadership role and saying we're going to fight, we're going to keep fighting every time I go out there. I'm going to play to win and all that. Forget the tanking and all that stuff. And CD just does it with his play, man. That dude is just. He's one of a kind. They were smart to give him. I'll say that. They're overpaying for players. They were smart to overpay.
They're overpaying.
Yeah,
for
what he's done this year, save for, it took him a while, obviously, to get going. And then there were some instances where it didn't look like he really wanted to play. The fact that this guy is putting up numbers with all of the injuries that they've had.
He's banged up right now, too.
And he's playing with that AC joint in his shoulder. I mean, it really has been a phenomenal year for him. And I don't know that we can say enough good things about what he's done and how he's turned his season, which looked like it was going to be a lost season for him, into, another all-pro caliber season for sure.
3 things real fast. What do we make of Diggs's Clarence Hill report that the Cowboys weren't happy about his rehab and his timeline on declaring to be out for this year? The rumors that they may consider trading Micah Parsons, and is Cooper Rush just smarter than Dak in that? I know he's not my first option, but I'm still going to throw it to him.
Those are like 3 different topics that we can spend like a whole half hour on each. Before we get to that, let's hear from Micah and CD from yesterday after the game.
Man, it just says, like I said, we're not going to give up. As long as I'm part of this unit, as long as we believe in each other, at the end of the day, I could look to my left and know I could count on them. We fighting for each other, There's a lot of guys fighting for new contracts, guys fighting to take care of their family. So there's still a lot of football to be played, and you don't want to put nothing bad on film or things like that. So, we fighting for each other at this point. At the end of the day, like, the record's the record, the game's the game. We're going to lose some, we're going to win some, but, it's a special feeling when you can fight for each other.
I always have belief. I don't care how many games we lost. I don't care how many games we won. I just know how much we got to do to finish the season out, and then the rest will take care of itself. So as for us, we'll see y'all next week on Sunday night. Yeah, it was brought up. Obviously, you're not going to be oblivious to what's being said around you or about your team. So, it wasn't used as any motivation. We were coming out here and doing what we got to do regardless. So, shout out to whoever thought the Panthers was going to win, but they got this one wrong.
I love how in the same sentence he says, we didn't use the point spread as motivation, but shout out to them, they got it wrong. You're obviously so.
CD dressing as the Grinch.
What was that? Like, what was that that outfit he was just wearing?
St. Patrick's Day.
I guess. But both the first 2 sound bites in there show you kind of what we were talking about. The Micah saying, as long as there's people that are fighting to get another contract on this team, they're not going to come out here and tank.
One of them.
There's people that they're not going to come out here and tank. Players don't tank, organizations tank. The Giants, starting Tommy DeVito, they're tanking, but they're not tanking because Tommy DeVito is not going to go out there and try.
Right.
Tommy DeVito is going to go out there and try his hardest. His hardest sucks.
Yeah.
And then CD obviously using the point spread as motivation. I don't know how they went off as 3-point underdogs yesterday to the Panthers. I really don't.
I liked what Cooper Rush had to say after the ball game. By the way, Cooper Rush 8-4 as a starter, y'all.
He's making himself some money too.
He said, the cool thing about this league is that you get an opportunity and it's okay to get better. And, I think we've got this mind that, Cooper Rush is just the backup guy. He's with no arm. He can't do this. He can't do that. Well, the proof's in the pudding what this guy's doing. That offense looks like it knows what the heck it's doing. Yeah, there's a gaffe here and there. That fumble obviously was.
He literally just dropped the ball.
Yeah, and he's had that happen a couple of times, right? But for the most part, I mean, who thought that these guys would even be in a position to say that with 3 weeks left to go in the season that they have not been eliminated from playoff contention?
It goes back to what we talked about earlier in the season with the big bag to Dak Prescott is like, would the Cowboys have been better off giving the bag to Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry or Joe Mixon or half of it and getting another left tackle and having Cooper Rush be your starter all year? It's like it brings up a pretty good point. Dak won 3 games. Cooper's winning games. It's like, I know I'm not saying Cooper's better he's not better than Dak Prescott, but he's serviceable enough to reinvest some of your money in other places, including establishing a good running game.
Yeah, I mean, you take $55 million, you give 10 to Cooper Rush, let's just say, and then you have $45 million to spread on the rest of the roster. So
you go get 2 or 3 really, really good football players for that money. We have spitballed that a lot, right? But it's a moot point now because this roster is set with Dak Prescott making the bag for now
that
until
goes to one of the things that Don
eternity
brought up, though. Do you trade Micah Parsons? That's another $35 million that is going to be against your cap. You're going to have 3 players taking up almost 50% of your salary cap. Do you trade Micah?
What can you get for him?
3 ones.
If you could get 3 ones for him, you have to make that deal.
What about?
I think you can at least get 2.
I don't know that anybody's going to give up 3 but 2. Even that, I think they have to do it. I mean, based on their salary cap.
Bradley Chubb got traded by the Broncos to the Dolphins for a first-round pick, but he was nowhere near as good as Micah Parsons was. Jalen Ramsey got traded from the Jags to the Rams. I think it was 2 firsts and a second. I think he's on that caliber of player where and it's at a more premier position where you can probably get at least 2 and a second round.
What if
pick.
you were guaranteed to get like Travis Hunter?
Well, you'd get less draft compensation if you trade. Like, if let's just say the Giants have the number 1 pick in the draft, and they trade for the number 1 pick in the draft. Well, they would obviously get less draft compensation because you'd be getting the first pick, and so you might only get 1-1 at that point, but you're getting the 1. You know.
I think it could be an interesting draft day trade if like Hunter's there at number 3 or something, and you offer Micah.
I think it's the same thing that every other team is facing though too. It's like do you give up a rookie contract, even if it's a first-round pick, to then have to pay somebody an exorbitant amount of money and then hope he stays healthy and then hope he can impact? Now this guy, clearly he can. He's going to get paid by somebody, but everybody has the same issue. It's a huge roll of the dice.
Let's say the Carolina Panthers, and I'm picking number 3, and Sanders goes number 1, and the kid from Texas, the left tackle, goes number 2.
Kelvin Banks.
Yeah. And
Cam Wardle will go number 2.
Travis Hunter is right there to the Panthers at 3. If you're the Cowboys call up and say we'll give you Micah Parsons for that pick
and one more. Yeah.
I don't do it if I'm Carolina.
Well, no,
because of what you said.
But the reason that somebody would do that trade is you have to have a rookie quarterback. You have to have a quarterback on a rookie deal. The Broncos, just for example, would be good for that trade because if they trade for Micah, they're not paying Bo Nix yet. If you trade for Micah, you still have 4 years of Bo Nix on a rookie deal. That's 4 years of Micah Parsons that you can have paying him $35 million.
Well,
you can't do that. You can't do that now with the Cowboys. Like they can't do that now because they're paying Dak $55-60 million. So the people that you have to look at are like the Bears, the Commanders. You won't trade him to the Commanders because it's in division, but you know what I mean. Someone with a rookie deal on their quarterback who has money to spend and are trying to capitalize on that championship window. The Texans, like they did with Danielle Hunter. Speaking of the Texans, let's get to them real quick. Wow, what a segue. So the Texans beat the Dolphins yesterday, 20-13. Let me pat myself on the back.
Right.
They're 9-5 on the season. They had no business winning that game yesterday. If Tua knew how to throw it to his own players, they probably would have lost that game yesterday. I've been disappointed, to say the least, in how CJ has played this season and how the offense has performed, especially in the last 6 weeks. It's really boom or bust when it comes to their rushing production. I think Joe Mixon has 2 games of over 100 yards and 3 games of less than 50 yards. So it's really boom or bust when it comes to rushing production. They're still winning, but it's not inspiring confidence at all with how they're playing. Chuck?
Yeah, we talked about this off camera. It kind of reminds me of what's going on with the Packers, right? It's like something's just not clicking. They're winning games, And salute to them
Right.
for winning games, right? I mean, that's most of the battle, but you're right. If they get into a playoff situation, do you feel like they could go on the road and have to win a big ball game at this point? No, but the good news for them is they got 3 weeks to figure this thing out. They can maybe rest some guys now because they've already clinched their division. They're already going to host a first-round game. This gauntlet that we were looking at all season long, where they've got to play now 2 games in 10 days against really good competition, right? Kansas City and Baltimore. Can you afford to maybe play your guys against Kansas City and then take Christmas Day off so that you can use it as an additional bye? I mean, they have a lot of good things going their way in terms of how they can mix this going forward. And, and we'll see if they can take it another level either before they get to the playoffs or when they get to the playoffs, but I'm with you 100%. The offense just doesn't look like – the fact that they had under 200 yards of total offense
181
and
yards yesterday. 181 yards. If they wouldn't have won that game if their defense didn't keep putting them on the 5-yard line.
Right.
Their defense is so good. They got 51 and 24, man. That keeps you in the ball game.
Will Anderson might be the defensive player of the year this year, which
He
helps.
should be. He's awesome.
I mean, the way that their draft last year is going to shape this franchise for the next decade is wild with CJ and with Will Anderson. But still, the offense, I see what you're saying. It helps them that they've already clinched the AFC South. Now you kind of have 3 weeks to play with. You're probably not going to get the 3 seed anyway, depending on how the Steelers play and how the Ravens play. Whoever ends up winning that division, you're probably not going to get up to the 2 seed either because the Bills are far and away, I think, the best team in the AFC, in my opinion.
Proved it yesterday.
I mean, I think they only lost to the Rams because they were looking forward to the Lions game, and they trounced the Lions yesterday. The game was not as close as that final score indicates. Also, why is Dan Campbell going for it, or doing an onside kick with 11 minutes left?
When you have to tell him it's coming.
Yeah, what are you doing? Anyway, that's besides the point. Do you think that with the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Titans to end the season, is there something that they can do to inspire confidence into you that they can actually make noise in the playoffs at this point, Chuck?
It's not any one thing, obviously. It seems like their receivers don't get often as open as you'd like. It seems like CJ's running for his life more often than you'd like. He's taking more sacks than you would like. There's a lot of different things there that are, obviously they need to improve at some point. But again, I think there's time. You don't know when somebody's going to get hot and then go on a run. And we see it all the time in the NFL. And a lot of times it's the teams that got off to horrible starts have kind of figured out how to play with what they have and don't have. So maybe that will be the case. And maybe they won't have to. If their defense plays like it did yesterday, they won't have to be good on offense.
How much is the loss of Stephon Diggs hurting? Because it seems like the offense is just
fair.
Seems like the offense is just Nico, go get open.
Right.
That seems like their whole offense.
He's Three's having a little bit of a resurgence here.
Yeah, Tank hasn't played extremely well.
He's played better the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just got to get more creative, I think.
Which is weird
offensively.
because Bobby Slowick was being heralded as this creative offense coming out of the West Coast system, the Mike Shanahan tree, and then now it's like
He's
they
been
got to get
pretty
more creative on
conservative.
offense.
Yeah, he's been pretty conservative.
Well, obviously, you point out a good thing. They went and got Diggs for a reason, right?
Yeah.
They felt like they needed a really solid veteran number 2. And by all accounts, a guy that was good in the locker room, too, that was lifting other guys up and teaching younger guys a thing or two about being the sage, wily vet. So that probably has a lot to do with it, too.
Bob, anything before we get out of here?
No, we're good.
Sage
Oh,
and
Tom-
Wiley. Shout out Tom Guerrero.
Shout out Tom
There
Guerrero.
it is. He's there.
That's all we got for you today on the Sneakers Cleats podcast. Remember,
What? So
download,
soon?
rate, review, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, tell a friend, tell an enemy. A quick programming note: we will be taking the week of Christmas off, so we will have a podcast on Thursday, and then we will not have a podcast at all next week. We'll be back after Christmas. I believe
We'll
it's on
thaw Chuck out when he gets back from the frozen tundra.
I don't know what you're talking about. He's going to be home all week with his big dogs.
Yes.
That's all we got for you today. We'll see you
His
next.
address.
We'll see you on Thursday.